everyone, welcome back to the D for Diving YouTube channel, where today we are taking a deep dive, literally, into one of the most talked about and controversial pieces of scuba equipment to emerge in recent years. What are we talking about? The Avelo Dive System. What if I told you there's a system that promises to let you ditch your BCD, dramatically reduce the lead weights you have to carry, and achieve perfect, stable buoyancy at any depth? Sounds amazing, right? Well, that's the premise of Avelo. Launched about 2 years ago at DEMA, it was much talked again around about 12 months ago when units started to be spotted out in the wild. The core premise behind Avelo is that instead of using a BCD, you use an air bladder inside the tank. It uses a water pump to pump water into the tank to create ballast and control your buoyancy. It's a radical departure, hailed by some as the diving future and dismissed by others as an expensive gimmick. In this video, we'll explore exactly how it works, the potential benefits it offers, the significant costs involved, and look at all the feedback from the dive community. And ultimately, I'll give you my take on whether this innovative system actually has a future, or if it just is too much buck for too little bang. So what are the basics of what exactly is the Avelo system? Well, at its heart, it's two main components. It's a Hydrotank and a jetpack. The Hydrotank isn't your standard aluminium or steel scuba cylinder. It's a lightweight, high-pressure composite tank, often filled to about 300 bar or almost 4,500 psi. Much higher than a standard scuba fill, but maybe a little lower than a cave fill in Florida. Inside the tank is a flexible bladder, which is what holds your breathing gas and can expand and contract inside the tank. The jetpack is essentially the harness and the control system, and it houses a battery-powered pump and purge valve. But how does it really work? Well, here's the key difference. Traditional BCDs achieve neutral buoyancy by adding air to the jacket, and by doing so, they increase volume. As you increase volume, you displace more water, which makes you more buoyant, because Archimedes' principle says that force going up is equal to the volume of water that you displace. As you change depth, the air volume compresses or expands depending on down or up, forcing you to constantly adjust the amount of gas that you've got in your BCD. Avelo flips this, as it's a constant volume but variable density system. To descend or become neutral, you press a button on the jetpack. This pulls surrounding water into the Hydrotank and around the flexible gas bladder, which effectively adds weight. And by adding weight, it increases the density of the gas, reducing its volume. And this will allow you to sink or remain neutrally buoyant. As you want to ascend or become more buoyant, you hit the purge button, which will just release the water from inside your Hydrotank, increasing the volume of the gas but lowering its density, and you'll start to float up in a very controlled manner. You don't get that pull that ascends you or sinks you like a stone by having the buoyancy control wrong. It's very slow and very subtle. So why go through all this trouble? Well, Avelo heavily promotes several benefits. The first, of course, is weight reduction. The actual unit itself is significantly lighter than a traditional tank and BCD, particularly so out of the water. And because you're using water as ballast, you don't need to carry anywhere near as much lead. Some users even claim they don't use any lead at all, depending on the exposure suit. The less weight you carry, the less weight strapped to your body, definitely is appealing. Plus, no bulky BCD means that you have a much more streamlined profile in the water. The second benefit, which is perhaps considered the holy grail that the Avelo system supports, is that the killer feature Avelo pushes is that stable, neutral buoyancy is easy to attain. Now imagine achieving neutral buoyancy, then ascending from say 60 to 15 feet to do your safety stop and not having to touch a thing. No gas out, no gas in, you just swim up and stop. Avelo claims this stability allows for much finer control using just your breathing across a much wider range than is possible with a BCD. Avelo calls it a flying sensation or achieving perfect buoyancy. Many users do rave about the stability, especially if tasks like underwater photography, where hovering is crucial, is being undertaken. They report feeling incredibly locked in and stable in the water column. Third benefit, perhaps, efficiency and safety. Avelo makes some significant safety claims. Because buoyancy changes are slower and less dramatic if something fails, you theoretically have more time to react compared to a standard BCD in the event of a rapid ascent. The stable buoyancy might also reduce task loading and anxiety from some divers. There are also claims about efficiency. Obviously, higher tank pressures mean you're holding a higher equivalent amount of gas than a standard tank, allowing potentially for longer dives. Although real-world gas consumption reports from users are very mixed. The sticking points, though, it all sounds very cool, doesn't it? And here comes the reality check. It's a big one. Cost. The Avelo jetpack will run to around $3,000, and the Hydrotank adds another $1,200 to $1,300 per tank. There is a bundle which is available, which includes a battery for about $4,000. This doesn't, however, include your regulators, a dive computer, or any other gear that you might need. Compare that to a high-quality traditional BCD and your regulator setup, which can be had for significantly less than half that price. And a battery will last 2 to 8 dives, depending on how much you're using it. But remember, if you're planning on doing more than a one-tank dive, you're going to have to schleck out another $1,200 for that second tank. And the costs don't stop there. You must take a specific Avelo certification course, the RAD or Recreational Avelo Diver course, before you can use the system. That's another $450 to $700 depending on where you go, and it's another day or two of your time. Then there are logistical hurdles. Avelo is only available at 15 dive centers globally. And when I say globally, I mean 12 dive centers in North America and 3 elsewhere. Avelo is not widely available, and you can only buy or rent them, get services like the required 300 bar pressure fills from authorized Avelo centers. Traveling with it, users have reported potential hassles with draining the system and specific visual inspection protocol requirements for the composite tanks. You have to travel with the valve off. Again, this is limiting the number of destinations that you can go to or that can support the Avelo system. Add to that the increased complexity. You've got a pump, a battery, electronics, seals, much more that could potentially fail compared to a simple mechanical BCD. The composite tanks also have a limited lifespan between 10 to 15 years, and you need to charge the battery. What about the learning curve? Well, it requires learning new habits. You have to unlearn everything you've learned from using a BCD and start again from scratch. Now, some users have noted that there is some difficulty in intuitively judging how much gas is remaining in your gas supply, as the pressure gauge reading can be affected by how much water you pump into the tank. And so simple calculations of how much gas remaining you've got and how long that's going to last become a bit vague. You therefore have to rely much more heavily on integrated dive computers like the shearwater models that Avelo is now looking like they're partnering with. Well, what's the word on the street? Or rather, under the water? Well, the feedback is definitely polarized. On the positive side, even skeptics concede that the buoyancy stability is real and it's impressive. Many who try it love the feeling of control and not having as much lead. The lighter weight out of the water is universally appreciated, and partnerships with respected brands like Shearwater and Scuba Pro also add a layer of credibility. There are certainly enthusiastic early adopters who say they would like not to go back to traditional gear. However, there's always a however. The criticisms are loud, clear, and consistent. The number one complaint? The staggering cost. Many experienced divers echo the sentiment that it's a solution looking for a problem to fix, arguing that good buoyancy control can be achieved with training in traditional gear. There are valid concerns about the additional complexity and potential failure points, and of course the logistical challenges, needing specific dealers for fills, for service, for travel, for tanks, for equipment. There's also been quite a lot of chatter about the initial off-gassing, where the smell from a new bladder can be quite off-putting, and the system is a lot less comfortable on the surface as you're not held as high out of the water. The reliance on battery power to add balance, which makes you less buoyant, is also a point of concern, although the purging of the water out of the system is much more mechanical. So where do I currently stand on the Avelo Dive System? The technology is genuinely innovative. That stable buoyancy concept is fascinating and clearly delivers a different, potentially very pleasant diving experience for many. Reducing lead weight is a definite plus, but the massive price tag, the mandatory extra training, the limited availability and the logistical hassles, and the added complexity, it's an incredibly high barrier to entry. For the vast majority of divers, is that unique buoyancy stability worth upwards of $4,000 plus training, compared to investing a fraction of that in quality traditional gear and simply honing your skills as a diver? Right now, I honestly don't think so. The benefits, whilst real, seem marginal for an immense cost, especially for experienced divers who may already have good buoyancy control. So can Avelo succeed? Well, a year ago, James from Divers Ready suggested that the company might be looking for an existing industry player to buy them out. That hasn't happened. And so perhaps as a niche product at specific resorts or for divers with physical limitations where weight saving is paramount, there is an opportunity. But for mainstream adoption, prices would need to drop dramatically and the support infrastructure would need to be put in place. Dealers, services, high pressure fills. It would need to be expanded exponentially. Unless that happens, I suspect the Avelo systems, despite its clever engineering, might remain fascinating, but ultimately a fringe piece of diving technology. A pricing novelty rather than a true revolution for the average diver. That's my take on the Avelo system. But what do you think? Is it the future? Have you dived it? Would you spend that kind of money just to have a more stable buoyancy experience whilst diving? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you found this review helpful, please give it a thumb up, hit the subscribe button, and for more dive gear analysis and adventures, hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next video. Thanks for watching, dive safe, and we'll see you in the next one.